Hi, this is Sid Pedinti. I welcome you to this presentation. The topic of today is what assets and intellectual property do you possess, specifically in your new or your established business. Once again, I'm Sid Pedinti. I'm the presenter today. I'm a business and intellectual property attorney based out of Los Angeles, California. I run a law firm called California Law Services. This presentation is not a legal presentation. This is more of an educational and informational presentation to educate you on identifying some of these assets, to understand intellectual property, and figure out for yourself, do you have assets or intellectual property that you'd like to protect, that you'd like to identify, that you'd like to create in your business? So let's go ahead and get started. If you would like to pull up a screen and take some notes or pull up a sheet of paper, go ahead and do that right now so that we can walk through this. I'll try to be as consistent in my approach so that it's neutral towards different industries, but at the same time, I'll give you some examples to identify whether some of these strategies may apply to your particular business. Okay, so here are the topics for today. Number one, I'll tell you who this is for and what this presentation is about. And next, we'll also explore intellectual property basics so you have a good understanding of what intellectual property really is, right, in the small business context at least. I'll give you some practical examples from different industries so you can relate to some of these in your own industry and explore some of these concepts as we walk through them. What are some of the benefits of creating and protecting intellectual property? Will also be explored. How you can use this information that I provide today in your business is something that I'll give you a few hints on as well. And lastly, what options do you have in terms of implementing and transforming your business with this information you have? We'll try and explore some of those today as well. So who this is for? Whether you're starting a new business or you have an established business, this presentation will give you some valuable information. If you're starting a new business and you have an invention or a creation, or maybe you're starting a coaching or consulting based practice, or maybe you have a professional practice, a law firm, or a medical practice, or a pharmaceutical practice, or maybe you're trying to monetize your skills and talents in the entertainment industry or the sports industry, then definitely information you learn today will be applicable to that as well. If you have an established business, then identifying what valuable assets you have in your business is what you can get out of this particular presentation. Next, also identifying the intellectual property that you already possess in your business. Chances are you already have some of these things. You just need to identify it and create intellectual property out of it. And lastly, how do you protect and also or monetize it are some of these strategies that I'll explore in not sufficient depth, but enough to give you good information to make a transformation. Let's take up the legal disclaimers. I did say I'm an attorney. I want to point out this presentation does not have any specific legal advice that you can apply into your business right away. This is more educational in nature. It's not specific to a specific industry or to a specific state. Excuse me. These are universally applicable strategies that are across nationwide, across the US and Canada sometimes, and also across the world, right? If you have a website, you already operate globally. So these are more universal concepts that I'll explore with you today. I also want to point out that there's no attorney-client relationship that's going to be formed by watching this presentation or by contacting me if you have a question. And lastly, I'm supposed to give a legal disclaimer that this is advertising material of an attorney. So that disclaimer's in there. That way, we take care of the compliance, we take care of the ethical issues related to giving this presentation and you being here. So let's get right into it. Hopefully you have something to take some notes on as you're watching this by this point. We're going to dive right into it. So what, why, and how? What is this presentation about? Well, it's about business and legal strategies with the specific focus on intellectual property and helping you identify it. Why did I create this program? Well, there's a myth going around, and that I hear very often from many of the clients and many of my peers as well, and entrepreneurs that I come across, that intellectual properties are applicable to only medium and large companies. This is not true. Small business owners like us have intellectual property. It's a matter of identifying what it is, learning about it, and creating a strategy that either creates intellectual property or protects it, or even monetizes it. So it's to empower entrepreneurs like you who are watching this presentation now with the information, with education, and perhaps even practical strategies that you can apply in your business to make a transformation. So, how is this going to help you? Well, I intend to have three primary outcomes as I'm delivering this presentation, and hopefully by the end of this, you're going to have a much better idea of how to identify the assets and intellectual property in your business, and also learn a bit more about some strategies related to IP. And lastly, this hopefully inspires you to go ahead and create an intellectual property in your own business. So let's explore what intellectual property is. These are the basics. Simply put, a patent, it could be design related, which utilizes a unique way of packing something. So think about the Coca-Cola bottle. That's a unique shape that is exclusive to Coca-Cola, and that's a patented design, for example, right? Or it could be utility based, which is a functional. It can be in the software or as well as hardware, right, in a computer sense. Or it could be an invention of some sort. And lastly, there's also plant related patents that are also granted. So when you think about these inventions or creations, think about the novelty it presents, think about the unique features, think about it being non-obvious, right? So think invention when you think about patents. So it may or may not be related to your business. Next, it's trademarks, which is related to almost all businesses. Think of this as a mark used in trade. How do you distinguish your brand from somebody else? Right? So trademarks are intended to protect the goodwill and the reputation that you build in your industry and with your clients. So when you say trademarks, think brand. This is your business. More than a business is a brand you create in the marketplace. So that's what trademarks relate to. And then you have copyrights, which, reverse the word. It's the rights to use your copy, something that you create, which is original, which is captured in a tangible form, which is published, which is creative, right? So whether you create a play, or you create music, or you create a publishing material, advertising material, those are all tangible forms that people can see, people can hear, people can read, and it captures your idea. So that's sort of what copyrights relate to. It's the rights to somebody else to use your idea or your content, right? But not the idea itself, but it protects the rights in that tangible published form. Lastly, we have trade secrets. Many people don't think about this, but yes, this is an intellectual property. This is almost applicable to every single business. So let's explore what these are, right? Think about some of these business assets that you have in your business right now. Your business name, your customer lists, right? Methodologies that you may use, financial forecasts that you create in your business, the specific strategies that you implement, specific training that you have gained which gives you insights, right? Those are all trade secrets that give you competitive advantages. What about the contract or vendor identities that give you a competitive edge in the market, right? Perhaps increasing your profit margin by 15 or 20%. What about specific sales techniques or scripts that you possess in your business or that you use, right? Or distinctive marketing styles. Think about these insurance commercials, how creative they are and how unique they are, each one of them. So these are all things that give you competitive advantages over somebody else, helps you stand out, helps you create a brand. So all the things that are contained in your brand that go into creating it, monetizing it, protecting it, standing out, and everything else that it's your life's work that's contained in your brand is your trade secret. So, in a broad sense, A trade secret is applicable really to any business. If you're in business, you most likely have one or many or almost all these different assets that you see on this page. Let's explore the legality and the legal side of intellectual property. Once again, this is from a broad perspective, and I'm talking about U.S. intellectual property laws here, not international. So, IP basics. So, patents. Yes, you need to register a patent to be granted a patent. It will be public record, whatever you submit to the USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office. They will publish it for public viewing, but it gives you protection from 20 years from the date you file it. Okay, so once it's granted, uh, patent applications are fairly, lengthy and they're pretty complex. So, that's why 20 years is afforded. If it's a design patent, so again, when I talk about design, think about Coca-Cola bottle. It's 14 years from the date it gets approved. So let's talk about trademarks. Generally, you do not need to register a trademark. Simply using the TM sign, as you see there, for trademark law is giving sufficient notice. Now, what if you don't use it? Well, you still have an indication that you're in business. As long as you're in business, you're open for business, and you're in trade, it's grantable. Now, keep in mind in terms of lawsuits, when lawsuits happen, many of them happen where someone with a registered mark, so as you see there, the R symbol with a circle around it, first of all, you can only use that symbol if you have a registered trademark, right? If you don't have it, and if you're using common law, use the TM sign. When lawsuits happen between common, let's say there's a very similar name, and somebody has a registered trademark, and another party who has been in business perhaps even longer than the one who just registered is using it but does not have a registered trademark, rather has the common law trademark that affords protection automatically once you're in commerce. It gets very tricky. There's lots of cases about this. There's fairly a lot of gray area in some aspects. There's very specific regulations and case law that determines what's next, but this is a tricky area. So think about registration and think about some of the protections that it offers. In terms of a trademark registration, it lasts for 10 years. Okay, so when you think about copyrights, again, just like trademarks, you do not need to register a copyright just to have copyright protection. You can use the C sign, as you see there, C with a circle around it, to give notice for common law. Once again, registration may be required if you want to bring an infringement suit, though, right? So you want to look at specific rules and regulations related to that. There are other benefits that are afforded as soon as you get a copyright. And again, protection length varies. It can vary anywhere from 90 years to the life of the creator or the author, plus 70 to 75 years. So protection for copyrights in terms of length varies by very specific rules. But again, you need to probably look at this in a greater detail by yourself to understand whether or not you have copyrightable material and how long those things are going to last for. Lastly, trade secrets. There's no registration required, right? This is not anything you register with the patent trademark office or the copyright office or anything else. These are reflected in contracts. These are reflected in your agreements, in the negotiations that you have with other parties, and of course your day-to-day strategy. As I showed you earlier, a lot of these strategies are applicable in a variety of areas in your business, right? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea as we walk through the next segment to identify what intellectual property you may have. So I want to give you an example from the entertainment industry, right? Here in Los Angeles, a lot of people I talk to are in the entertainment industry, so I decided, hey, let's make an example out of it. Now, keep in mind, uh, a lot of these may be applicable in other industries as well. These are general, universally applicable business and assets and intellectual property that your company may as well have, right? So let's explore them. Let's start from the basics. The first one, your business plan. Do you have any specific content, any ideas, any revenue models, or any financial models that you have in there that are unique, right? That you created, that is original, that is not a copy of something else, right? These may be valuable information. This is an asset that you have, right? It may even be an intellectual property, right? Who knows? What about your business name and logo? Right? This is definitely some sort of an asset that you have that helps you stand out, that helps you build goodwill, your reputation in the market, right? So this is also a trademarkable item, right? And intellectual property. In terms of that, you want to look at statewide trademarks. There's national rules related to trademarks, so I'm talking about the US, and as well as internationally. If you're operating online, especially to customers outside the US and from the US, right? If you're in the US and operating outside, and or vice versa, then you certainly want to consider international trademark protection as well, right? Of your name and logo. That way you're distinct in the marketplace. Next is advertising content. Of course, these are your assets. They're even called marketing assets. These are your creatives, right? These are artistic publications and publications that you may have. All this stuff is your assets, and it could even be intellectual property that's worth something. What about programs and courses that you create? Do these stand out in the marketplace? Do they offer lots of value to your clients and customers? Do they have valuable content that's a result of your training, education, insight, right? That's again stuff that's secretive that you want to keep a secret, you want to protect. So courses and programs that this entertainment company may have is certainly intellectual property, and it could be certainly some sort of a asset as well that's worth protecting. What about training methods? Think about something that's unique, right? The other day, I spoke to a lady who specializes in training people's voices, right? That's a unique method that's original to her, and that gives her the competitive advantage to others in her market operating in a similar field. What about systems, right? Internal systems and operative systems, the way you operate your business, right? Things you've learned by being an entrepreneur, by being in the trenches every day, walking through this stuff, right? Things you've learned by burning your fingers. We all have, right? Trial and error. These are your insights, right? What about insights into profit margins, how to drive more profits? So all this stuff is valuable, right? Think about your website, think about your contracts in terms of compliance, right? Think about the content, think about your URLs, right? And again, when I say compliance, your insights into compliance, right? Complying with certain stuff, the terms and services you provide, the disclaimers you provide, the content you've created, all these are valuable. What about the resources and insights you have into your industry? The value you can provide to your clients or your customers, the information you can provide to them, the insight you can provide that you've learned by being in that industry, working every day. All this is valuable. These are all your secrets that you want to protect. What about your marketing avenues, right? Digital, social, or mainstream, or joint venture deals? Again, all these are assets that you want to protect as you build them, as you create them, as you monetize them. So hopefully this gives you a good example, and as you're walking through this um, process, think about the different assets that you have in your business. Let's also talk about the business legal considerations, right? Focusing specifically on intellectual property, but from a broad aspect, where these different assets, where these different intellectual property that we've just identified in your business can be affected, right? Where is it impacted? So we have your formation documents. Of course, you want to capture and protect it in your formation documents. If you enter into partnership agreements, if you have multiple partners working in your business, then protection of these secrets, right? Protection of certain forecasts and insights and value that you bring to the table, right? How do you protect that? How do you evaluate it, right? How do you put a number to it? And how do you split it and monetize it, right? What about contractor agreements? protection of your property and your secrets in intellectual property certainly need to be identified and captured in contractor agreements, also in employment agreements, of course, right? What about with marketing consulting firms that you hire? How do they, you know, what they learn from you? How do they keep that a secret? Are they going to go work with competitors right away? Spill the beans of what they learned from you into them with their competitors, right? With your competitors. How do you identify those things? What about sales contracts or professional contracts that you have? Right? Think about the client contracts. Again, this is a big area for a lot of the coaches and consultants that I work with, right? Who have multiple people that undergo their clients who undergo the training, and now they open a business that's just like theirs, their competitors. So, how do you protect that in client contracts? What about website compliances? Right? There's very specific rules in the US and internationally in terms of how you need to comply with operating a website, a professional firm, a business. So, excuse me. So, in terms of regulatory, again, with your state, with the U.S., with any specific board agencies that may regulate over you, you want to be in compliance with those. Think about national and international laws that regulate the different areas that you're involved in, right? What about joint venture and exit plans that you have, or maybe investors and shareholders that you may be dealing with? Again, these are all from a broad aspect applicable regardless of which country you operate in. You most likely have these elements in your business, right? So identify what these are. Think about where, again, your intellectual property, how you need to protect it, which of these areas involve some sort of intellectual property being shared, some sort of secrets being coming out, how people are going to use that, where people are going to use that, how do you protect it from your side? So hopefully this gives you a good idea by now as you're walking through this of some of these things in your business. So here's the bottom line. Unless you're systematic, unless you're methodical, and unless you're organized, there could be a lot of chaos in your business, right? There can be brand dilution by people misusing your brand, by you not protecting it, by you not enforcing it, by you not even being able to identify it, right? And so those are some of the aspects. What about the financial losses that can also be created through this, right? If you lose valuable intellectual property, maybe a client of yours takes all your courses, videos, programs, products, or services and sells them online for peanuts. What would you do? Right? What would be the financial loss you would suffer because of this, the disruption? So think about intellectual property and think about creating intellectual property. That's one way to get over this in terms of being methodical, right? So what I mean by creating intellectual property, once you've identified these different aspects, a simple thing can be like having a common law name into a registered trademark that gives and affords you nationwide protection, right? So that's a simple technique or a simple way to really create intellectual property. It's turning something that already is intellectual property now into a registered, protectable, enforceable intellectual property. So as we walk through this, let me give you a few more practical examples that may help you or may not help you, right? The value, the reputation, and the authority that you're going to be able to build is what intellectual property really helps you as well, I guess, as a benefit, right? How do you go ahead and create an intellectual property? Well, there's 3 steps to it. First, you need to identify what you have from the from the assets, from the intellectual property side of it, and from the legal considerations that I just walked through, right? Mix and match, so to speak, right? Match up which area affects what. Next, you need to have a protection strategy. First, understand where common law and where the registration rules, what they are, and create a strategy on how you can monetize on those, right? You can tap into that protection. And lastly, think about a monetization strategy of your intellectual property, the things you've created in your business, right? How do you monetize it online through, a variety of ways, including advertising, and offline, so joint ventures, traditional deals, giving workshops, maybe, right? Meeting people, networking events. Where I mean, from every aspect. When you think about marketing, for example, think about monetizing, right? I want you to, as you walk through this presentation, if it's okay with you, if you want to think about the word marketing as monetizing, it'll give you clarity in the way how you can monetize intellectual property as opposed to market it, right? You want to build value, protect value, and then monetize that value. So I'll give you another example here from a digital consulting firm. Um, I put this slide in just the other day after talking to someone who had this firm, and we actually walked through these different areas to identify this. So, again, this is applicable even if you have a coaching business, if you have some sort of a professional service firm, even if you have an e-commerce business. Chances are you have all these different aspects that we're going to explore, right? A business plan, a financial statement, a marketing plan. Probably have a website and a blog. You have some social media assets, right? Lists or pages with followers, groups that you have access to, right? These are all different assets that, of course, you're monetizing and you want to also protect. Think about the other digital assets that you possess: banners, posters, videos, whatever else you have. The marketing softwares that you use, right? The landing pages that you've created, the sequences that you've built out. These are, of course, assets that are giving you a competitive advantage, and you want to protect them. Again, email systems, specific sequences or automation that you may use, advertising content, or sales scripts that you use that are very good, closing techniques, right? Marketing secrets that you have internally that give you a better profit margin ratio, right? Think about also the registered intellectual property that you may already have, right? But again, this is an asset. Think about the publications if you're an author and you publish a lot of books, or publication even in terms of the marketing publication, the content, brochures, those sort of things that you have, right? It is a publication in one sense, or the programs and courses you create. Now, all these are your assets, and many of them may even be your intellectual property. So, I know I've been talking here for a while, so I just want to do a quick check in with you. Do these strategies and all this make sense to you so far? Right? I know I can't see you here. This is a virtual presentation, but think about it to yourself. Do the concepts that I talk about, right? Did the intellectual property and the assets that I talked about, do you possess any in your business? Does this make sense to you so far? What secrets give you an edge in your marketplace, right, over competitors that you'd like to protect? What's insights help you drive up your bottom line? How would you like to monetize it? How would you like to protect it, right? How would you like to scale it? What terms and clauses do you need to revisit in your contracts to make sure that your IP is a bit safer, right? What conflicts exist and how do you prevent it, right? Maybe you can make a list of, now that you have a bit of insight into what could be intellectual property and what different areas, the legalities, how it may affect it. Revisit some of your contracts and make sure that you think ahead, give some forethought, and put together a plan to see where conflicts may exist and how do you prevent it. Make a risk mitigation plan, right? And lastly, how to monetize your already existing intellectual property a bit more effectively, right? Maybe you can have different licensing agreements in place. That's a way to monetize it, or online through courses and programs, right? Whatever it is, there's many ways to monetize it, right? And for you marketing geeks, again, the way to market it. How do you market more effectively, right? How do you monetize and build value more effectively? Does this make sense, right? So, what's your plan, right? What's your next move? What are you going to do? Think about that. Um, the first way to start is to learn more, right? About business, about law, about intellectual property, about your own business, what you have and what you want to protect. Next, you want to also understand a bit more about intellectual property. There's a variety of resources online. The US PTO office, the governing body here in the US, has tons of information, resources, um, as well as the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, has a lot of information you can look at. There's a ton of stuff on Google you can look at. So understand more about what you possess. How do how do you protect it? Be proactive in this topic, right? These are valued things that you created in your business. Be proactive. Be prepared in case of infringements or anything else that may happen. Identify. Go ahead and identify what you possess, right? Create intellectual property, create a game plan that you can follow. And then lastly, apply the game plan step by step to make sure that all this is implemented, right? So what you need in short is to create a very robust, very comprehensive intellectual property strategic plan that identifies what's in there and what you can do. There's many benefits to making such a plan. If you've made a business plan before, it's something similar to a business plan, except you're focused specifically on the assets and the intellectual property that that you possess in your business and how to protect them, right? Number one, this process gets you more organized. It'll give you clarity in your short term and long term goals as well. Number two, it'll keep you focused, right? Especially on focus on building value, right? Making sure that whatever you're creating has a lot of value that you can protect. Next, it'll also keep you better informed so you can make better decisions by knowing more, by knowing where to look, how to look at it, by understanding the consequences. You'll be able to make better decisions in your business. It'll also help you create much more value, right? As you create an intellectual property, that's a tradable asset, right? That can be bought or sold now, right? So it's worth a lot more. Think about protection of this value. Whatever you're doing in your business, the reason you got into business to monetize your skills, your education, your talents, or insights, or whatever, you want to be able to protect the value you've created so that you have some peace of mind at the end of the day, knowing every night, hey, the stuff I've created is protected, right? I know if some fire comes up, I know how to put it out. So it's having that fire extinguisher with you is what this whole process is about. When the fire comes out, you want to be able to put it out, as opposed to scrambling to look for a fire extinguisher as the fire grows bigger. Right? Does that make sense? So monetizing your IP, again, think about building a brand, right? Think about the market leaders in your market. What do they have? They've created a brand. They solve problems. They make transformations. They have a lot of value. So this whole process will also help you, will also give you more opportunities. It'll help you, different avenues will open in your business. And lastly, you'll be able to charge premium prices because now what you're delivering is value based as opposed to, you know, something else. It's not marketing based or it's not based on your mental perception of, hey, is this too expensive? Am I overselling my goods or products? But it's based on the value that you can offer, the solutions you can offer. So in the property world, it's property, 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 right? And for realtors, in the business context and intellectual property context, from what you're creating, it's value, 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 right? That's what your intellectual property is valued at. That's what your business is valued at. What value can you create to the client, to the industry, right? In the marketplace? What's the value of your business, your assets to you? Think about that. Put a number, right? Is it $1,000? Is it $10,000? Is it $100,000? Is it 1 million, 10 million? If someone was to come and give you an offer to buy your business, what would be that number that you can confidently say, hey, this is what my business is worth, and I'll be willing to sell it to you. And how do you justify that, right? So what's the value that you can bring to the table? How do you solve problems? How do you create solutions? Are you a catalyst for change in your business? Right? Can you create transformations? These are questions you want to ask yourself as you're building your business, as you're monetizing your business, as you're in there in the marketplace, spending lots of money in advertising, right? What value? How can you separate yourself from everybody else? So why is this so important when I talk about value, right? An asset is only as good as its value, right? Is that a fair statement? So think about, if you have a property, you, it's not the physical property that you have, the real property that you have that somebody's buying. It's what's it valued at? That's the first question that comes to mind. What is your property valued at? And that value depends on many things. So whether you beautify it and on the inside and spend 100,000 or 200,000 extra, well, again, just by virtue of doing that, it's not going to rise in value in a depreciating market, right? Does that make sense? So the same thing in your business. Focus on value, focus on creating intellectual property because number one, it builds goodwill in the marketplace. That's your reputation. That's an asset, right? It builds authority. It helps open many doors, as I showed you earlier. It gives you a lot of opportunity, right? Helps you drive to be more innovative, to create more value. As you're creating value, you'll come up with different ways to create even more value for yourself, for your customers, for your clients in the marketplace to be noticeable, right? Excel in quality. As you create intellectual property, as you have these assets, as you're going about your business, focus on quality, right? As you have more value, you'll be able to stand out as delivering premium quality. This gives you a lot of momentum. It creates momentum. You're now noticeable in the marketplace. People are identifying you as a rising force if you're not already a market leader, right? This, of course, will help you generate more revenue in the process, right? You can become irreplaceable with your clients. Think about that. All the contracts that you have, all the customers that you have, all the people you talk to. What if every person was to say, hey, I need you, right? Whatever it is per year, let's strike out a deal, let's make a contract, but I need you for the next 5 or 10 years. How would you feel, right? How would that place you in your market? Where would your business be? Where would your family be? Right? Again, so creating value in your business is very important, and then preserving value is equally as important. So don't lose it. It's not just about creating it, but let's talk about for a second the flip side to this whole equation in terms of legalities, right? Where things can go wrong. An infringement suit, they vary in a variety of ways. It can be patent related, it could be a trade secret related, which is more contractual based, or in civil courts. It could be in the state, or it could be across the U.S. It can even be international, right? An infringement suit, they're fairly broad. What happens when these suits come up, right? Somebody sends you a letter, stop your business right now and desist, right? Otherwise, face damages, the damages that you've caused to them, financial damages, the money that they've lost in revenue because of your infringement, right? Attorney fees, these can be very expensive in infringement suits, right? Intellectual property lawyers are very expensive, right? Firms charge a lot of money. Um, and again, so a lot of this can go wrong, right? You may be responsible for the other person's fees. What about transferring assets, right? This is the worst of all. Everything you've created now, you have to transfer to somebody else because they registered your business name that has been operating a lot longer, right? How does that work, right? That could be a disastrous situation. So protect it so that you don't have to transfer it. Next, think about ceasing operations. How would that impact your life right now if you had a letter that says to seize all your operations as of today or tomorrow or next week or next month or 2 months, stop your business completely, right? Everything you're doing. How would that, change your life? What about bankruptcy filings? I've been a bankruptcy attorney here in Los Angeles, as well as manage a boutique bankruptcy consulting practice in Toronto, where I'm originally from, since 2006. And in the process of, having many business bankruptcy filings, many of them had some sort of damages, some sort of infringement, something that went wrong that ended up was sour. So an infringement suit based on the damages could even potentially bankrupt you, right? Based on how litigious the other person wants to be. Especially if you're dealing with a bigger company that presses down on you, hey, this could end up in a bankruptcy suit. Let's go and break this down into a bit further detail, so we can take a look at the different aspects of what could happen. Right? Again, keep in mind these are just broad examples. So let's talk about your name and logo. What if it's copied? What if it's stolen? What if it's abused? What if your competitor comes out with a similar product that looks the same, that has a similar website and URL as well, and they're producing it with much inferior quality, though, right? How would that destroy you? Next, think about your website and URL. What if your name actually is somebody else's registered trademark? And you spend a ton of money on advertising your website. There's thousands of clients that visit it every day and whatnot, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, it's somebody else's trademark, registered trademark, um, right? And now you're forced to give it up to them. Not only stop, but give it up to them, right? That can be disastrous. What about products and services of inferior quality in the marketplace that look like yours, smell like yours, taste like yours, perhaps, that will destroy your goodwill, destroy your reputation in the market? How will that affect you? What about your advertising content? What if a competitor comes out with, you know, copies and publishes your content word to word? How would you stop it? How would that affect you? What about your programs and courses that you have? Right? So again, for a lot of coaches, this is something that I get asked from coaches a lot, and consultants or people who run programs and workshops and those sort of things. They have a big problem that your content's being stolen, duplicated, and sold in the marketplace for pennies. How do you stop that? Right? This is all destroying value. So next, publication and content. What if somebody just swipes it and duplicates it into another site? What do you do then? Right? How do you protect your value? Think about again your client and vendor list in the hands of competitors and competition, having what your secrets. That's bad. What about the financial secrets and forecasts? Right? Discovered by employees and split. Right? Given to somebody else, sold to your competitor. Again, this sort of stuff happens a lot. These are real examples, um, or practical examples that I'm giving you, but it's all over the news in the business section all the time. What about joint venture partnerships that break down and lead to them being a new competitor? How do you stop that? Right? Opportunities stolen from under your feet. These are all things that you want to avoid. So be proactive. Use this information that we're using today, that you've gained today, hopefully, to make a transformation in your business. Right? Create an intellectual property strategic plan. So let's talk about how you can go about doing that in your small business. A practical way that I can help you in the next few minutes to not only create but help you understand how to do this process. And you can do this at the end of this presentation by yourself, or later this week, or later this month. But by now, hopefully, you understand the importance of creating a comprehensive intellectual property strategic plan that focuses on your assets, that focuses on identifying them, right? That focuses on monetizing them. I want to share a tactic, or a particular methodology that is taught across law schools and across the world, really. When I attended law school in the UK and London, we were taught this. When I did law school in the US and California and Los Angeles here, we were also taught to follow this rule. So I guess it's applicable throughout the world. It's called IRAC, Issue, Rule, Analysis, Conclusion. What I've done is use that, excuse me. So what is IRAC, right? It's a way to analyze cases that come across you and answer problems. So you spot the issue, you figure out the rule that's applicable to it, you analyze the situation, applying the rule to your particular situation, or the situation at hand, or the case on hand, whatever you want to call it, and then you give a conclusion as to what could be happening. Right? These are how cases are decided. This is how law schools teach it. This is what attorneys do on a day-to-day basis in terms of identifying what's there. So I've made a little variation to IRAC that's applicable to intellectual property, that you can use right now. It's called identify, right? So that's identifying your assets and intellectual property. So that's step one. Again, right now, we're going into how to create an intellectual property strategic plan. So, step one, you want to identify your assets. You want to identify the intellectual property that you have. Step number two, you want to understand the rules and regulations that relate to common law, right, and relate to official registrations across the U.S. If you're in Canada, the UK, or across the Europe or internationally, right? There's common law or other specific rules, or there's other registrations. So understanding the rules. The next chunk is the big chunk, right? Analyzing what to protect and how to monetize what you have. So understanding that's where strategy comes in, right? The strategic aspects of how to grow your business, how to protect a brand, how to build value, right? How to create an intellectual property, right? Applying the rules, understanding the rules, and then what you've identified and applying what you've identified to the rules, right? That's the big chunk of it. And lastly, it's about implementation. So connecting the dots, um, right? Putting all the different pieces in place and implementing it step by step. Does that make sense so far? So let's analyze this in a bit more detail in terms of what you want your intellectual property strategic plan to contain, right? You want your assets and then you want your intellectual property. There's two sides of it. So your business plan, again, the contents, the ideas in it, the different business models that you may have, different revenue predictions and different revenue streams and revenue models that you created. All these are certainly assets and could be intellectual property. Take an example of you franchising your business or expanding to a different territory. Now, and let's say somebody's going to pay you a fee for you to set up shop there and for them to run it. Wouldn't your business plan in that context be of extreme value? Of course it would, right? Everything in it now is all of a sudden an intellectual property, especially if it's a proven concept. So, keep a broad mind as you're exploring what you have and how to monetize what you have. Next, your name and logo, right? Is it protected statewide? Do you operate nationally across the US? Do you operate internationally? And if you do any of these, then how do you protect your name, your logo, your catchphrases, your product and service names? It's pretty broad. Again, these are trademark strategies. In terms of advertising content, the creatives that you have, your artistic work, the publications that you've produced, right? How do you protect it? What's your plan? What about the programs and courses that you have? Do they stand out? Do they have lots of value to your clients, to the marketplace in general, right? What about the content contained in it? How do you protect that stuff? Are those secretive to you? Let's also think about your training methods that are unique, that are original, that give you the competitive advantage in the marketplace. What about the systems and operational elements of your business? On how to run your business, the insights that you have, the experience that you've built, the money you've burnt, what you've learned by trial and error that, let's say, a newbie doesn't know in your market, right? How do you protect that stuff? How do you give value to it? And how do you monetize it, right? What about the profit in terms of profitability, your insights into deriving more profits in your business? Maybe you make 20% more than all your other competitors. Well, that's a big amount. And maybe it's because of a particular scaling aspect that you've used, or a vendor that you may be using, or a particular marketing channel that you've identified and monetized, right? These are all things you want to protect in terms of, again, the business operational sides of it. What about your website and contracts, right? Are they in compliance? Does all the content, is it original? Is it protected? What about your URL? How do you protect that? What value does it have, right? Is it infringing somebody else's trademark? What about the resources and insights that you possess about the market? What value does it have, right, to your clients, to others in the marketplace? What information can you provide that others will have a long journey to discover by themselves, What valuable insights, again, do you have into these industries? How do you protect that? And lastly, you want to have, again, a monetizing strategy. So, different marketing avenues. I like to use the word monetizing again because to me, it captures a broader idea of how to monetize your assets, your skills, things that you've created from your brain. Marketing is a specific avenue that you use. And again, in marketing, there's digital, there's social, there's mainstream. And then the other aspect of it is joint ventures, uh, strategic alliances, mergers, right? Those sort of things, being acquired, exit plans. So your intellectual property plan should contain and cover, to be comprehensive, these broad aspects of your business. Hopefully, this makes sense so far to you, right? In terms of creating this, in terms of the importance of this stuff, as you want to call it. Think about your own business and the work you've put into it. So, what's your next move? How do you take this information that I've given you today and utilize it, right? Again, go think about the IRAC in your business as you're walking through after the end of this presentation and said, "Hey, I learned a lot of information. What do I do next?" So, the first thing you want to do is identify what you have, right? Make a list. Go through the different aspects of your business. I listed a whole bunch of those for you earlier. Go through it and understand it, right? Understand what rules are applicable to you and your business. Analyze a strategy, form a concrete strategy on how you can create intellectual property, how you identify it, how you're going to protect it, how you're going to monetize it, right? And then start implementing this stuff. Connect the dots. Um, if you're interested in getting this template that I have in a format that I can walk you through, I invite you to go ahead and book an intellectual property strategic call with me if you have questions about this presentation, if any of these don't make sense, if you want to clear up some doubts, or if you want to give me some feedback about this presentation. I'd love to hear from you. I am going to invite you. You'll find the link at the bottom of this page to my calendar. I invite you to go ahead and book a call. Excuse me. There's no sales pitch involved at this point. I don't even know what you have, what sort of business you have, whether these strategies apply to you, whether they don't. Again, this is a no pressure call. It's just to brainstorm some strategies and perhaps find some direction, right? It's completely confidential. It's just an assessment to figure out if the things I've talked about make sense to you. I'll be more than happy to share not only this slideshow and template, but other ones that we have. Okay, so yeah, I'll be more than happy to share those with you. I have a checklist that I can send it to you. So that's the end of this presentation, educational presentation. I hope you've gained some valuable insights into intellectual property. I hope at least you've started to think about, as you're creating the different programs or publishing stuff or marketing yourself, think about, hey, how do I protect this stuff? How do I go around doing all this? So again, thanks for being here. Hopefully this has been very valuable to you. I encourage you to learn more about intellectual property online on Google, read about it, go to the USPTO website, go to the WIPO website. There's lots of information on it. If you want something more specific, if you want us to help you out in terms of figuring some of the details or just speak about it and identify, hey, what's next? What do I do? Get some direction. I'll be more than happy to do that. Once again, it's not a legal call. It's just to brainstorm about this. You'll see at the bottom of this page, it's about 15 to 20 minutes is what I can put aside and walk through some of these strategies with you. So once again, I appreciate you being here. I hope you've learned a lot. Feel free to share this information with people internally who you have, who this may be applicable to, your business partners, or clients that you think may need some education in terms of this identification and protection of intellectual property as you go ahead and create it. Thanks again, Sid Padinti here. I thank you for being here. Have a good day.